Good morning and welcome to Unusual Activity powered by FinancialJuice.com with George Avedon and Milton Marmonides. Thank you for joining us this morning, the 25th of February 2015. Milton is on assignment this morning, but certainly we have a lot happening in the markets. Certainly Janet Yellen's testimony continues this morning. We'll get into that in just a few moments. But certainly no shortage of headlines, no shortage of specific stock information, and we'll get into all of that in a little bit with respect to syndicates and insider transactions, dividends updates, certainly a lot happening. So let's get into numbers this morning. We have the S&P futures down by 2.00 at 2111.75, excuse me, so down two handles at 2111.75. We saw yesterday certainly a big come into the marketplace on Janet Yellen's testimony, indicating that rate no evidence yet, quote unquote, well, no evidence yet with respect to economic activity that she's saying that would warrant an increase in rates before mid-year, and that's something that we want to see where the testimony takes her starting at 10. So again, 10 o'clock this morning, the testimony continues. In oil, certainly no shortage of a churn in crude, no shortage of volatility, really trying to find direction in crude oil, higher by 35 cents this morning at $49.62. I also want to keep an eye on natural gas here, folks, higher by 0.009, 2.898. Natural gas again higher by a penny at 2.899. We're looking for that, whether or not nat gas can move up to that $3 area, and that's something again on the heels of the Northeast experiencing rather extreme cold weathers recently. So that's something that we'll keep an eye on. We have gold higher by $9.40 this morning at $1,206.7. Again, $1,206.70, higher by $9.40. The 10-year back below the 2-year, the 2%, 10-year at 1.983. We saw a bit of a tick up before the testimony, above 2%, but we did see that come down in yield following Janet Yellen's commenting on when rates may start going up. The 30-year at 2.589. Again, hovering around the 2.5 level. The larger story here, folks, is where that actual yield curve is compared to, let's say, a year ago. Where are we on economic activity? Can the U.S. continue, let's just say, somewhat decoupling from the rest of the world with respect to perceived slowdown, and that's something that we'll continue to keep an eye on. The dollar, folks, the dollar is lower this morning at 94.342, again on the heels of Janet Yellen's indication that rates will not be going up before mid-year. Euro higher by 0.001 at 1.1349. Again, the dollar index 94.331. This is the DXY, this is the dollar index versus 10 other currencies that we want to keep an eye on. Now, when we take a look at markets from yesterday, certainly Dow Jones higher by about 0.5% or so at 18,209.19. S&P 500 continuing its strength, higher by 0.28 at 21. 15.48. We had the Nasdaq also higher by 0.14 at 4968.12. Something that we talk about rather frequently is the fact that you look back to highs in the Nasdaq during the tech bubble, and the timing of where we are um, in in the market now is rather uncanny. The highs were in that February, March, April time in the Nasdaq, and here we are again, folks. So, bit of a Nasdaq highs redo, if you will. Keeping an eye on that. Um, from a geopolitical perspective, keeping an eye always on the ISIL situation in the Middle East. A lot of headlines recently with respect to uh, activities, how countries are responding to it, counterterrorism efforts. Again, some of these headlines tend to, at least for the short term, impact markets, and some do not. So, what we suggest to traders is just keep an eye on the headlines, and keep in mind for traders and investors, want to have these headlines add color to the market activity, not necessarily moving markets. Also, keeping an eye on Saudi Arabia and OPEC nations, certainly with a lot of rhetoric, a lot of posturing, a lot of even 2 days ago we had rumors of that or chatter, if you will, that OPEC was going to have an emergency meeting. Again, something that and it really induced rather severe volatility in the oil. So that's something we'll continue to keep an eye on. From the EU, from the ECB, excuse me, Priet expects Eurozone growth estimates to be revised higher, so we'll continue to keep an eye on that. From the U.S. economic and more macroeconomic, from a global perspective, Baltic Dry Index at 524 points rises by 1.6%. We didn't have any news come out at 8:30. We are anticipating a 10 o'clock new home sales. At 10 o'clock, also 10 o'clock, Yellen delivers semi-annual monetary policy testimony, commonly referred to as the Humphrey Hawkins testimony. At 10 o'clock, 10:30 is the EIA petroleum inventories. We know that these numbers, considering the recent volatility in oil and certainly tomorrow in nat gas, certainly the inventory numbers will impact how the future trades, at least in the shorter term, and that's something that we'll continue to do. Continuing on here, folks. So some of the themes of the day in going into this. So one is euro volatility. We know that we've been saying that certainly with from a geopolitical perspective, will the Minsk Accord stay? Will there be a ceasefire in place? There's a lot of rumbling with respect to EU, with respect to Russia, Ukraine. There's a lot of information that's really not showing up in headlines. Typically, headlines you look for, ceasefire breaks, but a lot of information coming out, and it's really how the market digests that information, how the market interprets that information, and that's most critical. Certainly, U.S. dollar strength as of late has been rather impressive. Certainly today it's lower on the heels of the Yellen's testimony. We want to see if we're going down bullet 4 here. Want to see if deflation enters the conversation with Yellen with respect to global economic growth, and that's something that we continue to look for. Certainly oil volatility will continue. There's no shortage of that, certainly. The Greek situation, want to see where certainly they had an extension, but again, until we actually see an accord, an agreement, I think we'll have this continued posturing, continued rhetoric coming out. From the Treasury yield curve, we're watching that rather closely. How should Yellen really comment on that? Keeping an eye on Russia, specifically its relationship with the EU. This is, certainly post meetings, and of course, earnings season now concluding, and of course, as we mentioned, the Russian-Ukraine situation. There's something to keep in mind. We always like to bring this in at times. Is as we're taking a look at the Russian-Ukraine situation, one of the things that we want to keep an eye on is internal Russia. What's really happening internally in Russia? Keep in mind, Putin has a tremendous approval rating, and what we're looking for is his reaction to the EU sanctions. Certainly, if there's any breaks in ceasefire, how will the EU respond to that? And specifically, what's the relationship between Russia and China? And that's something that we've been commenting on for quite some time. We can take a look at overnight markets in Asia. The Nikkei, excuse me one moment, the Nikkei, we are at, we closed at 18,585.20, down 0.1%. Hang Seng closing at 24,778.28, higher by 0.11%. And the Shanghai lower by 0.56% at 3228.84. So certainly close to flatter on the Nikkei and the Hang Seng. In Europe, FTSE lower by 0.37%. The CAC in Paris, we are with us. CAC in Paris lower by 0.22%. DAX in Germany currently lower by 0.11%, and the IBEX in Spain lower by 0.14%. So certainly, as we're heading into the Open, which is about 28 minutes, about 18 minutes away or so. Certainly, eyes are going to be on Yellen this morning. Also, so let's dive into, before we get to the specifics on oil, let's dive into where we are in commodities, energy, and raw materials. We have crude oil higher by 9 cents this morning at $49.37. Gasoline higher by 0.0074 at 1.8300. Natural gas, as we've been commenting earlier, higher by 0.024 at 2.913. Heating oil higher by 0.0105 at 1.8849. Gold higher by $7.50 at $1,204.80. We have silver still below that $17 mark at $16.52.5, higher by 29.2 cents. Platinum higher by $4.30 at $1,166.90. And we have cocoa, which is basically flat at 3017. So continuing on, we had a night. We always like to bring in this slide, and really it's when we talk about the impact of oil on producers and the impact of oil on CPI and PPI data. Remember this gyration, the fact that the oil went from 107 and to 50, we had a significant decline in oil, and it's maintaining this decline. It wasn't just a shot in the arm and back. The fact that it's continuing its lower price is what's more important than just a quick shock and back. So clearly, this is what the worry is on the longer term. Certainly, it's a boon to the U.S., not just the U.S. consumer, but the global consumer. The fact that gasoline is lower, but really, what we're keeping an eye on is its effect on producers, its effect on CPI and PPI data. Remember, Fed always watches for inflation rates, and same thing with central bankers as well. So at the top of your screen, we have a list of ETFs and ETNs with respect to oil. And again, we'd like to keep folks honest. We want to see whether some of these analysts and pundits are right with respect to oil. And there you see there, and we'll continue to keep them honest, folks. So let's take another look at rates this morning. We have the 5-year at 1.476, the 10-year at 1.991, and the 30-year at 2.6, which is interesting. Want to see whether or not we can get that yield curve steepening just a bit here, because if we take a look at where we are currently, we do have a little bit of a steepening curve, not as steep as we were a year ago, but very interesting formation here. So again, continuing to see this specifically out towards the 30-year. We had that 2-year also, although we haven't really been discussing that too much, but that 2-year we want to see, it did come up a bit versus a month ago. So that's something that we'll continue to look for. Also, so let's get into some of the specific numbers on specific stocks that's going around desks this morning. Let's take a check on, let's get into insider transactions, and we'll simultaneously we'll see where we are in pre-market on these specific stocks. XRM, we have Cerium Technologies, not indicating anything yet, but we did have a significant 10% owner purchase of about 1.4 million. NS New Star Energy, we have currently, we have closed at $61.64 yesterday. Had a significant director purchase of 4.5 million. IBTX. IBTX, we have Independent Bank Group Incorporated. We have about $168,000 purchase overnight into this morning. So we'll take a look at what this security is doing. Here we closed at $36.38. Not much activity yet. Quite a bit of insider purchases on Dominion Resources. Currently indicating at $73.79. Quite a few here, as you see on the presentation. PEB, we have Pebblebrook Hotel. We had a closing yesterday, $48.40, about $56,000 purchase. We had QSR. We had a QSR $817,000 purchase this morning. Actually, this morning indicating $42.41 this morning. This is on Restaurant Brands International. DRA, Diversified Real Asset Fund. Yesterday closing at $17.83, $70,000 purchase. S&W Seed Company, yesterday closing at $4.47, $58,000 purchase. Time, we have closing at $24.08, nothing yet this morning, just about $100,000 purchase. TRU, we have this morning indicating $17.10. This is TrueCar. We had a $1.2 million purchase from the CEO chairman, which is rather important. So again, we're continuing to see activity there. On the buybacks, we like to report that when stocks have specific buyback programs, and that's rather important there. So MYGN, $200 million increase at $34.15, currently indicating this morning. DY, Dycom Industries, currently indicating at $39.25 this morning, approves a $40 million buyback program. VMI, Valmont Industries, currently indicating $124.46, bit of an increase from yesterday's trade. Again, new repurchase program valued at $250 million. SAGG, ZAG Incorporated, $7.19, authorizes $15 million repurchase. Let's get into some of the dividend updates. NATL, we had raises dividend 8% to 13 cents from 12 cents. We don't have anything yet on NATL, but again, dividend raise. ALB raises dividend by 5% to 29 cents per share. Yesterday's close actually indicating this morning at $58.08 on ALB. FFIC raises 16 cents from 15 cents, currently indicating at $19.70. IPCC, Infinity Property and Casualty, currently, well, actually closed at $75.36, but does very quarterly dividend. TCP, to pay supplemental dividend of 5 cents per share, closed yesterday $68.52. It looks like in some interesting volatility towards the close. Want to get into specific stocks that are making rounds this morning. WGBS, positive results of a single cell study utilizing its smart chip trademark technology conducted in collaboration with the board with the Broad Institute. So WGBS this morning at $5.75 this morning. So higher. Yesterday's close was just right around that $4.10. Apple, rumor may finally be added to the Dow 30. So that's rather significant. Currently indicating $131 in pre-market, again, $131.60. So what we'll like to get into some of the syndicates this morning. We have AMAG. AMAG Pharmaceuticals filed to sell $125 million in common stock this morning, indicating $43 even. AWI, Armstrong World Industries, we have indication of $55.75, files automatic mixed shelf security shelf. For those folks that are not familiar with syndicates and automatic mixed security shelf, it could be a very broad-based type of offering. It could be common, preferred, convertibles, various debt instruments with various durations. So that's something to keep an eye on. As CVSL files automatic common stock shelf, we currently are. Actually, we are waiting for that data. Yesterday's close at $5.50, so not a huge mover, but again, important to note. CLDX at currently indicating at $24.72, files to sell 7.25 million shares of common stock. CRIS, we have $2.99. Files to sell common stock, no amount given. GUID, guidance software, waiting for this data here. Files to sell 30 million mixed security shelf, $30 million mixed security shelf. Currently indication of $6.02. QTS this morning at $35.56 in rather active trading this morning. In pre-market at 9.35 million share secondary priced at $34.75. So we'll continue on for a few of the syndicates here. RLYP files to sell $130 million in common stock, currently indicating a $36.88. Royal Caribbean, certainly much in active security here. This morning is $76.65, files automatic mixed security. So Spirit Airlines, so getting to some of the larger names here, at $80.60. Let's see, also request withdrawal of registration statement. Strategic Hotels BEE, currently at $12.97. Mixed security shelf. TNDM. Uh, Tandem Diabetes Care currently at $13. Files to sell 60 million in common stock. UPL, Ultra Petroleum. We have mixed security shelf. Interesting there. $17.33 this morning. Zencor XNCR currently at $14.86. 5.5 million share secondary, and we have Zayo Group, currently indicating $29.49. Files to offer $500 million of common stock. So, folks, as we get ready for the morning, just a few minutes away here, let's take a check on where we are in futures. Just about where we were in the beginning of the program, at down 2.25 points at 21.1150. Crude oil more or less flat at $49 and 33 cents this morning, and gold higher by just about $9. It's $1,206.20. The dollar continuing is a slight weakness here in the morning at 94.374, and the euro at 1.1346. Folks, thanks for joining us on Unusual Activity, powered by financialjuice.com, with George Avedon and Milton Marmonides. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day. Wishing you good hunting.